Right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the meeting of the Cabinet of Staffordshire County Council today, Wednesday, the 16th of February 2022. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Gosh, all my words are coming out all muddled up, Mr. Bradbury. Mr. Bradbury, do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Leader. I have one apology from Councillor Mark Sutton.
Agenda item 2, declarations of interest in accordance with Standing Order 16. Do I have any declarations of interest? I see no hands being raised. Agenda item 3 is the decision notice of the meetings held on the 19th and 26th of January 2022. Can I have your approval to sign those off as a correct record? Agreed. For the record, that's agreed unanimously. Agenda item number 4 is the leaders' update for February 2022. Colleagues, last week's council meeting we approved our budget and future aspirations for Staffordshire over the next 4 years. At their heart, our priorities and funding decisions are about supporting those who need us today whilst investing for tomorrow, to create more opportunities for Staffordshire people. We will spend more than ever next year, over £360 million, caring for the elderly, people with disabilities and vulnerable children. A further £40 million will fund work to promote good physical and mental health, promote sexual health and tackle drug and alcohol addiction. And we will invest more in highways, in school buildings, in skills, training and business support to make a positive difference in people's daily lives. Tackling climate change and making Staffordshire sustainable is a green theme and priority running through all our plans over the next 4 years and beyond as we strive to reach net zero. I was delighted that at the same council meeting we approved a nature recovery declaration led by Councillor Tagg to protect and enhance natural habitats across the county. The pandemic has illustrated just how important our natural surroundings are to health and well-being. The declaration will kickstart numerous practical schemes from tree planting and protecting peatlands and wildlife habitats to investing in nature-based solutions to climate change. By working with partners, including the Staffordshire Wildlife Trust, we will do our bit and more to protect the natural environment which makes Staffordshire so special. Since our last meeting, the government published its long-awaited Levelling Up White Paper and how it will close the prosperity gap across the UK. In principle, we welcome the spirit of the document, especially where it supports and strengthens the work we are doing with our districts and borough councils. Through the new Staffordshire Leaders Board, our 9 councils are bringing our knowledge and resources together to grow our economy, invest in skills, improve transport and more. We want to talk to government about how it can make the case for more resources for Staffordshire to accelerate these plans. We invest where we can to make a positive difference and create more opportunities for people. And one investment that's reaping dividends is our work to promote apprenticeships through Staffordshire Means Back to Business programme. During National Apprenticeship Week last week, we showcased great stories from across the county of people taking their first step on the career ladder and bringing major benefits to employers. And I'd just point out that my second son is an apprentice and is absolutely loving it, absolutely wonderful. Businesses in Staffordshire can apply for a £5,000 grant to recruit and support a new apprentice. And we have supported more than 240 apprentices so far. And I'd urge businesses across the county to look at the range of help and support available through our Back to Business programme. All the examples in my update today show how we are working in partnership with councils, the wider public sector and businesses to make a positive difference on the issues that matter to our people. In Staffordshire, we are also blessed with a thriving and effective voluntary and community sector, and we will continue to work with those support organisations, large and small, who make an enormous difference in our communities. So, colleagues, on to the next item, which is agenda item number 5, which are the minutes of the meeting of the Property Subcommittee held on the 2nd of February 2022. Can I have those? Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Price. Next item on the agenda is the update from the COVID-19 Member-Led Outbreak Control Board. Councillor McMahon, we're with you.
Thank you, Leader. Although community spread is prevalent and the numbers are high, Staffordshire is now below both the West Midlands and England rates. Hospital inpatients remain stable, and the ONS all-cause death rates are below the 5-year average for this time of year. Despite this, the health and care sector remains under significant strain, with non-COVID winter pressures and increased staff absences due to COVID. However, it does look as if the pressure of the virus on staff absences is beginning to ease, as the Local Resilience Forum and UHNM, who declared a critical incident in the early part of January, have both stood those incidents down. Although the demand for the vaccination against COVID has seen a material drop since the turn of the year, this has been the case across the county and the country. But despite that, Staffordshire remains third highest in terms of vaccination cover in the West Midlands. We have particularly high vaccination cover amongst the elderly and the most vulnerable, and people of all ages are still presenting for vaccination. It is a brave person who predicts the future, particularly given the vicissitudes of this virus. Notwithstanding, I think the Director of Care is correct in this report, and the report is taken from the UK Health Security Agency recent report, COVID Ramp Down Paper. Whilst being mindful of the possibility of a troubling variant which would upset this prediction, it is likely that the virus will become endemic, albeit at high levels, such that we can safely treat it as a symptomatic illness, whilst vaccine boosters may be required to protect the elderly and the most vulnerable in a similar fashion to the annual flu campaign. Precautions to prevent community transmission are now advisory. Legal requirement for isolation if positive will end on March the 24th at the very latest and possibly next week. Symptomatic testing likely to be the case only in hospitals and with care home residents. Asymptomatic test and trace will be discontinued, albeit outbreak management and mass testing, if we're to find a new variant, will remain extant. In the light of the current outlook, the Local Outbreak Control Board is now meeting only monthly, and the district and borough groups have stood down, but can be stood up at short notice if the situation deteriorates. The report finishes by thanking all for the supreme efforts of the last 2 years. Many in all walks of life have played a significant part in saving lives, keeping vital services going, supporting the economy, and helping the most vulnerable. And I'm sure we'd all wish to give everybody a great deal of thanks. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor McMahon. I don't see anybody indicating, so thank you for your update report on the local outbreak, member-led Local Outbreak Control Board. Moving on then to agenda item number 7, Staffordshire Means Back to Business oral update, brought to you by the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills, Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Leader. So let me start as I always do by providing some statistics on the current trends and challenges in our economy locally. So we have pleasingly seen another fall in our claimant rate, the number of people claiming unemployment benefits in Staffordshire. So that's fallen by a further 0.1% to 3.1%. And that's compared to an average for the West Midlands region of 5.5% and 4.5% nationally. So again, we see our unemployment rate here in Staffordshire considerably lower than in other areas, both locally and nationally. In terms of young people, aged between 18 and 24, again, we've seen a fall. The last time I reported these figures, we had 4.9% of those people seeking employment. That's now down to 4.2%. Those are really positive trends, but we do expect that the rate of decline in those will start to become more shallow now as we're getting to much lower numbers and getting back more towards where we were prior to the COVID pandemic. So we are very mindful of the need to redouble our efforts to continue to reduce those numbers as we get to the more difficult end of that. Another trend is that is notable is that there's been an increase in the overall number of company insolvencies, which has increased by 88% in November 2021 compared to the same month the year before. This is because of the various government support schemes being wound down, and it is something that was expected as businesses that actually weren't viable have had that state support withdrawn. Along with the dramatic increase that we've seen in the number of job vacancies and the increase in economic activity, this is the other side of that rebound in our economy and returning to a normal state. So it is something to note and something that we will keep an eye on, but something that was expected. In terms of businesses that are concerned about their viability, I would just like to highlight that although the national schemes are winding down, our growth hub does still provide support for businesses that are concerned about their future, and I would encourage anybody who finds themselves in that situation to contact the growth hub and to seek support and advice there. In terms of the vacancy rate, which is the other key indicator in Staffordshire, again we've seen that increase. So we've seen an increase of 1%, or around 400 job vacancies between November and December, which are the last figures we have. So again, a slightly slower increase, but still a further increase on really dramatic growth in the demand for employees in Staffordshire. So a busy, growing, rebounding economy for our county, but one that we are keeping a very close eye on. As the leader mentioned in his update, the recently published government white paper on levelling up in the United Kingdom is an extremely important step in defining our approach locally to economic development and making sure that we're aligned with that national direction of travel. I'm very pleased to see that the white paper highlights the need to continue to work with areas such as Staffordshire, where we have already seen the benefit of government investment into levelling up in our many town deals and future High Streets Fund projects around the county in particular. But I'm particularly pleased to see that there's a focus on local empowerment, private sector engagement, monitoring and accountability, and a focus on education in particular as a key driver for opportunity. The best way to level up is to give people highly skilled, well-paid jobs that give them a good future. And I'm really pleased that that's a very strong theme in that white paper, as it is in our work here in Staffordshire. We're committed to working with government and with our partners locally to continue that work on economic development. And we are also committed in terms of our own budget. The leader mentioned that we passed our budget here last week, and I'm pleased that there is a continued additional investment of £1 million into our economic development team here to continue to support our economy. That investment is predominantly to make sure that we have the people to deliver those services, to work directly with businesses and partners, and it is really important. I was also very pleased earlier this month to see that government will ask Homes England to play a wider role in supporting local government to deliver more regeneration and affordable housing, and we are engaging extensively with Homes England to bring forward opportunities in Staffordshire where we have areas that we feel would benefit from that investment. And I would highlight their schemes such as the Branston Interchange, which unlocks considerable additional housing near Burton, the Stafford East Gate, just over my right shoulder here, which is another major regeneration scheme, and also our emerging A50, A500 and A38 strategic corridors. They are really significant opportunities, not only to deliver housing, but to deliver massive economic growth and productivity gain. And it's good that government is interested in levelling up in areas such as those. We will be talking to them more about that. I think those are the main points that I want to cover today, Leader. So I will leave it there, but only to note one other point, forgive me, which is that we will shortly be bringing out for consultation our economic strategy, which joins together many of the points in government national policy, but linking it to our needs locally here in Staffordshire. And in addition to that, we will be launching a separate but connected rural economic strategy, recognising that the predominant geography of Staffordshire is a rural one. So we have two strategies that we will be bringing forwards. They'll be out to consultation with businesses and the wider community, but then I will be bringing them back to this Cabinet for you to consider. And I will leave it there. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor White. So a lot of good news there. Councillor Jessel.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, excellent news, and excellent news in my part of the world as well, with the A38 interchange at Branston Locks. And as we know, Branston Locks is being built out at a very rapid rate. So that's good news for those wanting new homes. And it's equally good news that after 2 years of a pretty torrid time for businesses of all sizes, shapes and descriptions, that actually there are the signs now that we're bouncing back. But there was one statistic you mentioned, that an 88% increase in the number of business failures. Percentages can be very misleading. I don't know whether the Cabinet member has actual numbers, because, you know, 88% on top of 10 is not that great. If it's 88% on top of 2,000, then that really is significant. So that would be, I think, help to put it more in context. The other question I wanted to ask is, you see in the national press that unemployment rates are significantly higher now in the over 50s. I wondered if we got any data on that. I'll be perfectly honest, it's something that I think in terms of the recruitment of people into social care services, I often believe that the over 50s have a huge wealth of experience, life experience, and perhaps, absolutely, I think that applies to some of us. But actually, whether it's a sector of the community that may be experiencing higher levels of unemployment, that actually we could focus our recruitment attentions on that age group. It'd be interesting to know. Thank you.
There's a very interesting article in the Financial Times yesterday about the demographic pressures we're facing, with fewer children, babies being born, and an older population coming through. So your point is really well made, and very important that we start to think carefully about how we address those issues. Councillor Tagg, then Councillor DeVille.
Thank you, Leader. I think, as the Deputy Leader said in his opening statement, I think it's amazing how resilient the economy has been during this period, with the lockdowns, with the really upset businesses' life and the social fabric of the country, and the bounce back is really good to see. But as the Deputy Leader said, there are issues with, unemployment still high and businesses failing. I just wanted to plug the workshop in Lancaster Buildings in Newcastle-under-Lyme, which is a training centre. Last week they had a series of apprentice drop-ins for Apprentice Week, where people can go in and work on their CVs, put applications in. And this was funded through the Advanced Town Deal money from the government, and has been open now since the spring. And I think it's a really good place for people in Newcastle to go in and have a road test on their CV, have a look online for applications, get advice on how to apply. And this is a really good initiative which we brought into the town centre, and it will help a lot of people, particularly as we're beginning to see now with the money from the government and the support now ending for businesses, that we're going to see more businesses in trouble and possibly failing, with people having to look for new jobs. We're looking to help them in Newcastle through the workshop funded by central government through the Advanced Town Deal.
Councillor DeVille.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Many thanks, Mr. White. A really, really encouraging report. And you're right, Councillor Jessel, it's been a dreadful couple of years or so, but isn't it great to see the Staffordshire economy bouncing back? And I don't just mean, the JCBs of this world, I mean the small businesses that are, said it before, extremely resilient. They get on with the business and they are bouncing back. Is it going to be tough? Yes, it is. We're not going to see instant growth. We're going to see gradual growth, I think, over the next 2 years. But certainly, working in partnership again with business, with district councils and other partners. It's great to see the economy definitely bouncing back. I am so encouraged to hear your words, Philip, about apprenticeships and the number of apprenticeships and continuing growth of apprenticeships in the county. You well know I'm biased. I'm an ex-apprentice. My son served an apprenticeship at JCB. So I really know, Leader, firsthand, you know, the great benefits that people get from going into the world of work at an early age. University is great, but university's not for everyone, and there are alternatives. And finally, Leader, great to see the developments in my area and Simon's area around the A50, A500 corridor. We've had some really positive discussions about the Moorlands Growth Board and about really exciting projects in the Staffordshire Moorlands, not only in the three towns but in the rural areas as well. Brief question to the Deputy Leader, Chairman, if I may. Will you be continuing to offer the tremendous support that you've offered so far to the Moorlands Growth Board? Because I sincerely hope so, Deputy Leader.
Councillor Parry.
Thank you, and a really, really positive update and report on how well Staffordshire's economy is bouncing back. I think it's interesting to notice how Staffordshire seems to, I wouldn't describe necessarily as buck the trend, but become slightly more advanced than other parts of the UK, or compared to the UK as a whole, or compared to the region in terms of vacancy rates, in terms of claimant rates, in terms of economic growth and improvement, in terms of investment, in terms of diversity. And I think you ask yourself, why is that so? Why is Staffordshire, in a sense, more resilient and more successful than comparative kind of areas or neighbours? And I wonder whether that's due to a number of economic factors. One is that we no longer have those, if we might describe them as heritage industries, if you like, that went through a long period of decline, such as mining and some parts of the engineering sector. And those have, if you like, recovered, and those assets in terms of land's been repurposed and growth has taken place. But also the great diversity that we have in Staffordshire of industry, expertise, skills, science, all those sort of areas. So, you know, good university bases, extremely good high technology-based companies, often hidden within the economy of Staffordshire. You don't realise the stuff that's happening out there. And the supply chain that creates of other industries and other businesses dealing in all sorts of high-tech areas, supplying those businesses in itself, you know, and even going up to the Great Yellow Guard itself in Rochester, you know, the supply chain there that's largely local, you know, they do make great efforts to do that, which I think gives Staffordshire that sort of unique economic flavour that gives us, I think, a stronger foundation than lots of other places. So we are fortunate, but we shouldn't rest on our laurels, because there are places around the place, if you look at parts of the northwest, for example, that do even better because of that diversity and because of that ability to attract interesting and high-tech investment into their areas, which then have that ripple effect of creating other industries that supply them. I just wanted to finish with a question, if I may, because it's in my ignorance I asked the question. But I know when, you know, I had a kind of apprenticeship, and so I was a kind of a business trainee that went around the business in various departments and saw various things, sort of marketing and accounts and sales and all sort of stuff, which is really useful for a young person. I'm just wondering whether our apprenticeships actually assist in that area of generating, you know, entrepreneurship in a sense as an apprenticeship. I think a lot of it is very, if I may say in my ignorance, I'm guessing is skills and technology based. And I'm just wondering whether that area of, which I'm always listening is, where are the new sources of entrepreneurship in this county, whether apprenticeships can be used in that context as well, or whether that's already been done.
One of the best ways to have a good life with healthy outcomes is to have a good job. And connecting a couple of points made by Councillor Parry and Councillor Jessel, Councillor Parry referred to the heritage industries, and Councillor Jessel referred to the over 50s. Many of the over 50s who are struggling to find work came from the heritage industries, and indeed that's where they cut their teeth. And in some instances, in parts of this county, perhaps Cannock Chase is an example where we used to have mining going on, people may well be struggling to get themselves into the new world of work. And actually, I think that between the two of you raised a really interesting challenge, which I think we do need to be addressing or continuing to address. I know we've been working on it for some time. Because if we can address that, we reduce the pressure on social services, we reduce pressure on public health and primary care, which is all to the good. We don't want people reporting sick. Councillor White, quite a lot to go on there.
I'll try and be quick. Thank you, Councillor Jessel. Yes, there's a lot going on in your electoral division, and it's good that the county council is able to support that growth in the economy locally in your part of East Staffordshire. On the question regarding insolvencies, we're very much in line with the national trend in terms of those, but the numbers, just to give you some context nationally, in the month that I mentioned, there were about 1,700 insolvencies. So if you scale that down to Staffordshire, we're talking about tens. The reason for including it in the update is that I am very aware that they're usually incredibly positive updates, and that reflects the strength of the Staffordshire economy. But I do think it's important that when we report back to Cabinet, that we report back the good and the bad. Insolvencies is a mixture of both. It is part of the normal business cycle. That whilst there are always businesses being established, and we work really hard in Staffordshire to encourage business startups, and we're a great place to start a business, there will also be businesses at the other end of that life cycle. And it is part of that return to normality. Without that assistance from the taxpayer, from all of us, to keep businesses going that actually have reached their natural conclusion. So it's just a little bit of grit in the oyster to make the pearl there, but also to note the importance of the effect of that on the people who are in those businesses, and we are still here to support them. In terms of the other questions, we will be delighted to continue to support the Moorlands, and our work to support economic growth in the Moorlands and the right infrastructure is incredibly important. Those strategies that I mentioned, the broader economic strategy and the rural economic strategy, really join together in an area like the Moorlands, don't they? And I'm particularly keen to make sure that we do see delivery on what comes out of those strategies in areas such as yours. I'm particularly thinking of Cheadle there. But we also work with all of our other districts and boroughs in a similarly close way, and we celebrate that work. It's one of the ways that we're effective. Regarding apprenticeships, happily, they cover all walks of life now, and business and professional functions are a really, really strong strand of the apprenticeship world, and you can receive qualifications up to MBA level if you are in the business world and you want to use an apprenticeship as your route to do that. They're like the Swiss Army knife of the skills world. They're brilliant, and it's fantastic. We have so many businesses that invest in those here in Staffordshire already. Through our Apprenticeship 500 scheme, we're supporting several hundred of those at the smaller end of the business scale to be able to do the same. The other thing I'll just mention is our Ignite programme in colleges joins some of that together, because there we've touched around 7,000 students over the last 12 months, giving them training in terms of entrepreneurship and how they might go about starting up their own businesses, of which I'm pleased to say a number of college leavers have actually taken the leap straight away and done that. So hopefully that answers all the questions, and as I said, a bit of grit in what's otherwise a really good news story overall, as I'm proud to be able to deliver whenever I speak to you about our economy. We're very lucky to have the businesses and workers we do.
Excellent. Right. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to the next agenda item then, that's Staffordshire means back... no, we've done that one. This time we're doing the business case for care home developments. Councillor Jessel.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. In 2019, Cabinet agreed the principle of council-owned nursing homes to provide additional nursing home provision. However, in September 2020, Cabinet agreed to suspend the refurbishment of Hillfield House in Burton, And in September of last year, Cabinet further agreed not to progress with that refurbishment because the building could no longer meet our requirements. There is a need to reassess the demand and the need for further nursing home provision, not least because over the last 2 years there's been a significant impact in terms of demand. The demand dropped off significantly. There's also a further impact of COVID in terms of infection control requirements, and that has significant impact on the design and layouts of buildings. There's also now the impact that we're trying to assess of the changes to adult social care and the forthcoming reforms. Alongside that, and I've mentioned this before and I will come back to this point, we need to drive up standards in terms of the CQC ratings of our care and nursing homes. So this report is in effect asking for Cabinet's agreement to allow additional time to do a more detailed reappraisal of the needs of people and communities, the costs, the demands, to have further engagement with stakeholders, and then put forward proposals in the autumn of this year for the best model for future provision of additional nursing home capacity, if indeed that is deemed to be necessary. I will also just refer you to paragraphs 11 and 12 of this report, which actually alludes to increasing or improving the quality of the provision of nursing and care home within the county. And the council will also be doing a fair cost of care exercise. Currently at the moment there is a significant variation in what the council pays for care home placements. Some of this is historic, but now central government and ourselves are wanting to have a far more standardised approach. And what I'm hoping through this approach and the fair cost of care exercise, we can actually incentivise homes to improve the standard of care. As far as I'm concerned, having care homes that are requiring improvement or inadequate on an ongoing basis is not good enough as far as I'm concerned, and certainly not good enough for the people of Staffordshire. And I'm sure we will all be in agreement with that. So I do appreciate, Chairman, and I know you're probably going to frown at me, that we do need to conclude this piece of work as soon as possible, and I fully appreciate that. But I do believe there needs to be a thorough evaluation before putting options before the Cabinet. Those options may include significant investment, and we do need to be absolutely assured that it is on a sound basis and sound planning for the future. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and then I'll move the recommendations.
Councillor Parry.
This fair cost of care issue is going to be quite a headache, isn't it, for both users of care, but also for councils to assess what that should be. And it's really satisfying to realize, to see that you are looking at that. And I'm just wondering whether would that be something that you're looking at averaging out what the cost of care is, or are you looking much more at the cost structure of care in various settings, and therefore trying to come up with some form of optimum model, if you like, of what a care offer should be, and presumably, if we invest in this sector, we might be able to demonstrate what that best practice might look like in terms of cost structure and offer. That means that, in a sense, we can be more assured about what the fair cost of care should be. Because, as you say, if it's a range, because over here you've got not very good, and over here you've got excellent, well, where do you set it? And I know this is what part of this piece of work is, but I'm just thinking how far it would go to give us a clear picture about what we should be looking at in terms of fair cost.
Yes, Councillor Parry, you're absolutely right. And there isn't a direct correlation between what the county is paying for a placement and that quality of care. We may be actually paying some in the care sector a relatively more modest rate, but they're actually producing or providing a really good quality of care. It will be quite difficult, I'm sure. As with all things, if you start to standardise the rates, there are going to be winners and losers. And it's a matter of how one transitions to that. But I think it is worked on the basis, or I would like to see it work on a basis of assessing a particular package of care and what is the fair rate for that. Now, in certain circumstances at the moment, we may be paying less than that, and in other circumstances, we may be paying more. So I don't underestimate the challenges, but I think the principle of what we're trying to achieve is absolutely right. But what I would like to see tied into that, and whether it's classed as a quality premium, I would like to see us stimulate the market to actually drive those standards up in with this process. If we don't, I think we'll have missed a trick, to be perfectly honest. Thank you.
The approach you're taking is absolutely the right one. When things change, we reassess our position. And there has been more change in the care market over the past 2 years than we've witnessed, certainly in my lifetime. So the net result is we do need to reassess what our position is. So I applaud your approach. And you indicating, Councillor Williams? No. So I'll go back to you to sum up and read the recommendations, please, Councillor Jessel.
Thank you very much. So I recommend that Cabinet A approve officers to re-evaluate the recommendation of 2 council-owned care homes with nursing, taking into account quality and sustainability of the current market in Staffordshire, and B, to approve officers to present a business case for council-owned care homes with nursing to Cabinet once the outcome of work is confirmed. I so move, Chairman.
You've heard the recommendations moved. All those in favour? For the record, that is unanimous. Moving on then, thank you, Councillor Jessel. Moving on to the next item, which is the Integrated Performance Report, Q3 2021 to 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, on Thursday of last week, we approved our strategic plan, and the performance report is how we get held to account for the delivery of our strategic plan. So it's a really important document. The Scrutiny Committee takes the opportunity to go through it. It's our opportunity as Cabinet members and portfolio holders to just highlight those areas where we're doing well, but also acknowledge those areas where perhaps we're not doing quite as well and we need to do some improvement. It is also our opportunity to be transparent about our finances, and under Councillor Parry's stewardship with Rob Salmon, we are clear about our financial positions, and we do so on a quarterly basis. So before I hand over to other members of Cabinet for their comments, Councillor Parry, would you just like to come in and say a few words, please?
Thank you, Leader. Just in terms of the finance and the financial accountability, as you rightly said, last week we approved our budget moving forward and refreshed our MTFS. That demonstrated the ambition, but also the challenges that lay ahead, and crucially, the uncertainty that is before us in terms of the changes within our operating environment, legislative changes, all sorts of things that may well have a significant impact on the Council's finances in the future. So I think we've been cautious with that. And I think that cautious nature of the Council, that stewardship under our County Treasurer's management and direction has been exemplary. And I think that's borne out by a recent audit report on the use of funds that came into the Council, significant funding that came into the Council during the COVID-19 pandemic crisis period. And that audit report pretty much gave a clean bill of health to the County Council in the way it took decisions in the spending of that funding and the close accountancy of that funding. So that's, I think, a positive example of good stewardship and good financial controls. Also pleasing to note that our forecast underspend increased in the third quarter from an underspend of 1.9 in Q2 to 3.9 in Q4. Now, as many of you know, this is not my first rodeo, so I know that that may well change before the year end, but I think the expectation now is that we will be able to demonstrate an underspend by the year end, and hopefully not a million miles away from that 3.9 figure that we are reporting today. So, yes, a relatively strong, sound position financially for the Council to report on at this Q3 period. But let's not underestimate that things can come left field. We're not far off the final, the financial year end. We've only got a month to go, just over a month to go. Things can still happen, but and there are still challenges, and there's still some areas of the Council that are financially challenged. So we cannot, in a sense, take the pressure off the need for cautious, strong financial control, but also the work that we've already got in place to generate savings, efficiencies, service improvement and transformation. Those things must continue. This is not it's all over because, look, we can demonstrate underspends. That's been done because of other factors. I think the future says we must maintain that level of cautiousness and control over our spending and over our investments. But nevertheless, I think we've now got a relatively solid, sound position, stable position that we can move forward from. Thank you, Gemma. So the rest of this report, of course, is performance, and I'll leave that to other colleagues to report on.
Thank you. And I just would, coming in behind you on that one, Councillor, I'd just reflect on the fact that we've only got another 1 year settlement, and we do keep emphasising the importance of a 3-year settlement to allow us to do the planning that we need to deliver good services across this county. To Councillor Williams's portfolio on highways, wouldn't it have been good if we'd have had more certainty around the funding for highways and allowing us to plan for a 3-year period? But we are able to get started with highways on our programme there, but not to the extent perhaps as we would have liked. But notwithstanding that fact, we are getting started. I intend to go through the document really in the way it's written. There are highlights on page 34 of the great performance areas and some of the challenges we face. Moving to health and care, delighted to see that the finances are green. I know myself, having run health and care for some time, that keeping on top of the finances is a real challenge. And of course, you've had the challenge of COVID-19, Councillor Jessel and Councillor McMahon, which, let's be fair, is probably a bit of a challenge in the portfolio, but notwithstanding that fact, you're dealing with it wonderfully, or as best you can under the circumstances. Councillor Jessel, if I can invite you to speak.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. And COVID has certainly had a significant impact. And whilst, as Councillor McMahon has said, the severity of illness that it's causing now is far less, the numbers of people still catching it are quite high. And I think there will be quite a long tail of infections and the impact of it before we're finally, well, I don't think we're ever going to get to the end of it, but where it has minimal impact. Yes, I mean, the performance report does reflect a green performance for finance, which is due significantly to underspends. Demand on care home placements throughout the year has been significantly less than budgeted. But there still remains medium-term financial pressures, which obviously we will deal with in a fair and business-like manner, as we always do. In terms of performance assessment, this does reflect the high demand, particularly on home care services, and also within the social care sector together, staff recruitment and retention as well as the impact of COVID illness and staff having to self-isolate. The other impact, of course, is that care homes have not been able to accept new residents. A month ago, there were 74 care homes that were closed to new admissions. That's now reduced to 50. So we're going in the right direction. But of course, it does mean finding a suitable home placement for an individual becomes far more difficult in satisfying their needs and also the requirements of family as well. And if I can say that the brokerage demand on the service in December of last year was actually the second highest on record. So the demand has been unprecedented, and it's had an impact on our response times. But I am pleased to say that with the additional investment and the incentives in terms of recruitment and retention, there are a whole range of incentives that have been reported to Cabinet at earlier meetings, are beginning to show some real benefits, and things are getting better and the indicators are going in the right direction. So that is the positive. I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the staff who provide a whole range of social care, both provided by the County Council Direct and through Nexus, and also the private sector who have a significant capacity within this sector, to thank them all for their hard work, their resilience, and their ability to absorb month after high demand. This pandemic has gone on far longer than I ever thought. I've still got my infamous Daily Telegraph from March 2019 that I put my dirty walking boots on every single day, because that's the day we went into lockdown. And I never thought, it happens to have a picture of our Prime Minister on it, gives me satisfaction every day. But actually, it's giving me great satisfaction that actually we are coming to the end of it. We are seeing the light at the tunnel, but I think I would like it put on formal record. My sincere thanks to staff. I feel as a Cabinet member, I've not been able to get round to see staff as much as I would like, because we've all been extremely careful and look forward to meeting more of them. So, as I say, my sincere thanks. Some positives, the work we're doing with building up community resilience via supportive communities is going well, and the work with community champions. There was a brilliant piece of work done in Burton, and we're now spreading that out to Nutton and Cross Heath, so that's really good. In terms of the Warmer Homes Fund, I'm going to leave that to my colleague, Councillor McMahon, to give an update on that. The carer service, which is an extremely important service to support carers, both adult and young carers, was reviewed in November of last year, and I'm happy to report that the new pathway is working very well. In terms of the joint mental health strategy, that developmental work is still undergoing, and unfortunately it is reported in the report that it will be available in April of this year, but I have to report there will be a small delay in bringing that to Cabinet. So overall, it's been a difficult period, but the investments that we've made are beginning to show the right results, and I hope in the next quarter, Leader, that I will be able to report a more positive picture in terms of performance.
Thank you, Councillor Jessel. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to say a few more words about the supportive communities and then go on to the Warmer Homes project. Supportive communities with a strength-based approach is now more important than ever coming out of the last 2 years. And as has been rightly said by Councillor Jessel, we've seen an extension of the community champions, which is welcome. The community health points which started just before the pandemic hit us, is now beginning to see more referral rates, and things are beginning to pick up, which is welcome. We're engaging with primary care in terms of social prescribing. There are 2 voluntary organisations which are doing low-level adult social care, such as meal provision, to help the adult social care piece. And we expect to see the supportive communities offer go from strength to strength. But we have to be realistic. It needs to increase significantly in order to have a material impact on the disease burden in our community. But I think given time it will. In terms of the Warmer Homes project, as you can see, 10.8 million in all, delivering free first-time central heating and insulation to the homes of those who are in particular need. And I'm delighted to be able to report that very shortly after the end of Q3, we received another grant of a further 5.9 million, which will support 550 homes. This has 3 great outcomes. Clearly, it addresses the green agenda. It has a significant increase in health, particularly respiratory conditions and cardiovascular disease, and it addresses fuel poverty. Associated with this offer is debt counselling. So it enhances the approach to the fuel poverty challenge. We need to remind ourselves that these tranches of money aren't just given to us, they're competitive. And with 3 out of 4 occasions, we've been successful. And I think there's every prospect that we'll be successful in the future and be able to continue this. Thank you, Leader.
More power to your elbow, Councillor McMahon. This is an outstanding scheme, and those Insulate Britain Johnnies who are sticking themselves to roads can come to Staffordshire and take a look and see what we're doing. Absolutely brilliant, and let's keep cracking on. Councillor Price, we're going to move on to families and communities. I understand that you might be saying a few words on behalf of Councillor Sutton, who is hors de combat at the moment. Councillor Price.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Thank you to yourself and for Councillor Parry bringing this document forward. I was caught slightly on the hop by Councillor Sutton, so I will put a couple of items just out of the document if I can, and then I shall go on and talk about SEND. So significant progress has been made across the families and community service area in Q3, and as you can see from the document, they're both amber. The overall amber performance reflects much work that's taken place during this quarter, balanced with managing some key issues in relation to demand and capacity. The Children's Transformation Programme is key to tackling the challenges of demand and capacity, particularly in relation to children in care, and work to progress the transformation continues across the service. And a new district operating model went live in October 2021. Both Mark and I have already been out to 3 of the districts. We've still got the others to visit, and I'm off to Cannock tomorrow to go and visit the district lead there to see some of the good work that's being done. The feedback from the 3 we've already visited has been extremely positive, and despite the trials and tribulations of actually getting children's transformation and SEND transformation delivered, it's been actually fantastic to see. And the reason that we have performance assessments around amber is that is still yet to bed in, and we will not see outcomes immediately, but as we go forward, hopefully with the next quarter performance documents, we'll be able to see the significant progress that's been made in that area. Around SEND, the challenges facing SEND continue, and we're waiting for the outcome of the SEND review, which we hope will provide some responses to the challenges all local authorities are facing. We've taken action to address the capacity in our education psychology service. We've appointed 8 assistant educational psychologists to support this aspect of the SEND system, and our hope is that the colleagues in these posts will get to complete their psychology doctorates to become fully qualified educational psychologists, thus providing a succession of colleagues entering the profession. And it's nice to see that we're doing some of our grow your own as well, as I like to call it, which I think is really fantastic. As part of our children's transformation, we have increased the SEND key worker numbers, and we are currently undertaking the induction process for those that have been recently recruited. Our new head of SEND started at the end of January, and he is working with the district teams to monitor the key performance indicators. As I said previously, like most other local authorities, we continue to see increased demand for SEND, and we continue to work with partners to provide the best support possible. There are numerous things that I could pick out here. Household Support Fund, building resilient families, work that we do, Stafford Early Help Strategy, etc. The work goes on. It's really good to see. But the one item I did want to just pick out as well is the council had welcomed 178 Afghan refugees, Newcastle under Lyme, and I wanted to thank Staffordshire County Council, Newcastle Borough Council, and the other councils that are also involved, and the general public as well, who got together and collected over £5,000 to support these families, feel welcome, and I think that's really important. As I say, 22 of these evacuees have already been permanently resettled across the United Kingdom. I'm very proud to say that 14 have been permanently accommodated in Staffordshire, and have been welcomed into our society, and I look forward to continue the work around that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and that's a neat segue between yourself, Councillor Jessel, and the community's delivery plan which we've set out. Our communities were absolutely vital to us during the course of the COVID-19 pandemic. It was great to see them pulling together. Councillor Wilson, I know that you've been instrumental in bringing some of this together. I don't know if you want to say a few words, but it is, and that's the reason why it was mentioned in the leader's statement at the beginning. The voluntary sector has been tremendous in providing us with the support that we needed to get us through the pandemic. Councillor DeVille, then Councillor White.
Yeah, thank you, Leader, and many thanks, Leader, for yourself and Mr. Parry for bringing this excellent report today. I'm massively encouraged to see that I think moving forward we're on a very solid and sound financial platform. However, I think as a cricket lover, fellow cricket lover, Councillor Parry would agree with me that we're facing challenges, uncertainty, and a bit of a Brisbane sticky, Ian. Bit of a sticky wicket, which is really all the more reason why we adopt the approach that you spoke of, Mr. Parry, an approach of prudence and caution. However, of course, as the Deputy Leader indicated earlier, we're also massively ambitious. So we'll face the challenges. We'll show the challenges a straight bat, and we'll deliver the really exciting projects that you spoke of earlier, Philip. If I may, Chairman, very briefly refer to paragraph 34, where we are bringing back our household waste sites back in-house next month. We constantly, Chairman, look at best ways of providing service to our customers, and bringing this service back gives us greater flexibility, gives us greater control, but our customers are not particularly bothered about us having greater flexibility and greater control. What they are bothered about, and what having greater flexibility will provide, is better frontline service to the customer in a much used facility, and also provide very best value for money for our customers. So that's another project, Chairman, that I'm very excited about. It comes back in-house next month, and a tremendous amount of work has gone around our waste sites since the pandemic, since reopening, and then moving into bringing the facility back in-house. So another really positive achievement, Leader, I think, in challenging times, but we're ambitious for the people of Staffordshire.
And very neatly, you've moved us on to economy, infrastructure and skills, so that's quite handy. Because Councillor White would like to speak. Councillor White.
That's great, thanks, Leader. I did want to speak on one of the points that Councillor Price mentioned, but it does segue quite neatly into my portfolio area of skills and the economy, and that was just to highlight and celebrate that item that Councillor Price mentioned about our training of educational psychologists. This is an area where there is a national skill shortage. There are simply not enough people who are trained educational psychologists, and that's a problem we faced here in Staffordshire a couple of years ago. They're essential to our work with children with special educational needs, They play an integral part in writing the plans for those children for how they're going to be helped with their education and care. And we took the decision that we were going to focus on growing our own rather than trying to pinch people from other areas. And that success in having a cohort that have gone through now who are moving on to complete their doctoral studies, I think illustrates the strength of our approach here in Staffordshire. We see a challenge and we look for a best-in-class solution. And in this case, that is fulfilling our needs and our duties towards those children who need that help. And it's also giving fantastic career opportunities to people here in Staffordshire to train and develop into those highly paid, highly skilled jobs. So I think you said more strength to your arm to Dr. McMahon earlier, and I'd say more strength to your arm, Councillor Price, with this one. Would you like me to move on to the economy and skills piece?
Yeah, well, you've done a lot on the economy update, but I just want to take us back, because you took us back anyway, to Councillor Wilson, who was waving like this, and because my peripheral vision's going in my old age, I missed you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. Not really a lot to add, really to echo the words of Councillor Price in regards to the incredible work that we've done in Staffordshire with our Afghan refugees who we've welcomed into our county, and we're helping them have a safer and happier and more productive and prosperous future. And also to just talk about the work that the community's portfolio has done with working with volunteer groups and really underpinning everything that this council is trying to achieve throughout a county to help its constituents. So really just to echo those words, thank you, Leader.
Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to be associated with the comments to do with the Afghan refugees, and how Newcastle Borough Council and the County Council and other partners work together on a brilliant sort of integration there, and a safe integration, not only for the new arrivals but also for the community. I'd just like to say a few words about 46 and 47, which is the climate change initiatives during Q3, a very busy time with COP26. We started our tree planting initiatives for the Queen's Jubilee, and also we launched our Climate Change Action Fund as well, which is, I'll give it another plug, I did at the council meeting, I have at other meetings, is to say the deadline for the Climate Change Action Fund is the 25th of February, so please, community groups, have a look on the website, search on the website for Climate Change Action Fund and get an application into your local councillor for that, which will be really good. But also wanted to talk about the 45, which is the rollout of superfast broadband, which has been a massive success across the county over the last few years. And we are working to get that 4% who've missed out on that through voucher schemes and top-up schemes. But really also wanted to flag up that what's going to be coming later towards the summer is our refresh of our digital strategy. Obviously the move to gigabit, which will be an exciting step forward for connection speeds across the county. And also we'll be concentrating on that small amount of people that have missed out previously, that they're probably at the front on this one, really to get them connected, particularly in the rural areas. So that's a really exciting refresh of the strategy, which will come forward later in the year.
Absolutely excellent, Councillor Tagg. I'm delighted to hear that. It's been vital during the course of COVID-19, and augmenting that delivery is superb. Councillor David Williams, or Councillor Hot Bitumen, whatever you want to be known as.
You can just call me Councillor Green Rag Rating if you want. I don't mind at all. Just to let you know. And just on the superfast broadband, I've got some issues in my ward actually. And I just wanted to say thank you to the officers who are really trying to help out as much as they can to get a new development, which unfortunately we might have to use a Section 52 on, to try to get the rest of the development has got superfast and half hasn't. So thanks to the officers for trying to address that. From it comes to highways and transport, we've had some challenges, and we've got some real challenges going on at the moment. If I take the transport side initially, unfortunately, DFT and the BSIP hasn't come through, so that has been delayed till well after April, and so our plans are delayed until then as well. And there are many challenges going on with the bus companies, with only 50 to 60% of pre-COVID patronage still returned. But we are working with them to do whatever we can. And there are, as I say, there are challenges, but we're going forward with that. I will say some real positives, though, that one, my staff are working in the right way with bus companies to address issues, and we are trying to address any potential withdrawals, with trying to put in new schemes or amalgamate schemes and amalgamate unchanged routes to address that. So I'd like to thank them for that. Some real positives. Our LED lighting scheme that is a real PFI project that will bring some real benefits both for the climate change and for the finances. Is ahead of schedule and is working really well. So I know, like, again, they're like Councillor Jessel, both the staff who are doing that and the staff who have been mending and doing the roads and are still doing it with the gritting. I want to spend my personal thanks to them at this moment in time because they are working in challenging conditions, but positively we are keeping all of our roads clear, all our main roads clear, and we're doing really well with that. So what are we doing? So the Stafford Western access route is opened, the Litchfield bypass is opened, real positives there. And fortunately, even though DFT have given us as a highways a settlement for the next 3 years, which is a reduction unfortunately, again this Conservative administration has stepped in, being very prudent with its finances, being in the right way. We're going to invest £15.5 million into that. And that is a real bonus for us to be able to ensure that, one, we can do the work that we have to do normally, even with an £8.7 million reduction from DFT. But we've stepped in and we're doing something like that. And we're starting a new phase. We're looking at the transition, the transformation of our highways, and this will enable us to do that proper start, but in a prudent way, in a way of managing the finances in the right way so that we're not putting onto the taxpayer of Staffordshire. We are making sure that we can do that. And we're also making sure that we can address more issues more effectively. The trials that we've undertaken, the recent one we've done with our gully cleaning team that we've brought in, has made a massive impact that has been noticed out there, and not only by councillors but by the members of the public. Leader, I can actually say I've had thank yous coming in, which is amazing, but we have actually had thank yous, and that doesn't normally happen on my portfolio, I can honestly say that. It makes me feel wonderful. It makes me understand why I'm not getting my MBE, as you said earlier on. But I think the thing for us is that the positive part for us, we are starting to transform how we deliver highways. We are looking at the ways that we can do it more efficiently, more effectively. We're working with our local businesses. We're going to see JCB to look at the Pothole Pro in more depth and see if there's anything we can do to potentially even alter what it does to make it more efficient. I don't think it could be quite as efficient as Stoke seem to claim, but there we go. But what I will say is that the other thing is we've got the buy-in from the staff. We've got the buy-in from the staff on the ground, and we're making sure that they're involved in the changes, they're involved in the transformation, because that is the way that this will work. So, Leader, and absolutely, I have to say from my point of view, I have a lot of negativity coming to my portfolio from elsewhere, but for myself, there's a massive amount of positivity going to be able to come out. Thank you.
For anybody that's not in the room, Councillor Williams is literally quivering with positivity and determination. You can see it in his eyes. There's flecks of foam on his mouth. Hey? Oh, well, there you go. But well done. And can I also add my thanks to the gritting teams. Sometimes I'm getting back in late at night, having been to meetings, just as the gritting teams are heading out for a long night, throwing stuff down on the roads to keep us safe so that when we get up in the mornings and we head out to work, our roads are safe to drive on. So thank you very much indeed to them. What a team. And they just crack on and get the job done. Brilliant. Finally, Councillor White, anything to add?
Just briefly, Leader, because I think it does bear commenting upon, and that's just the performance of some of the schemes that we've rolled out over the last year, that we're continuing in the last quarter to support our businesses and our economy in Staffordshire during the, thankfully, as it turns out, the tail end of the harshest COVID measures. And particularly there, I'd highlight our Back to Business scheme, which has brought in £6 million of investment into our businesses, a partnership with our 8 districts and boroughs, and that funding coming both from the County Council and from those partners, and through into our businesses to make sure that where they do need help and assistance, they've been getting it locally from their councils. The thing that I'll highlight in there in particular is the apprenticeship 500 scheme. That scheme continues to roll, and we're at just about the 300 mark in terms of apprenticeship starts, and those are in small and medium-sized businesses where we're supporting both the funding for training, but also funding for salary. And that's so important that those small and medium-sized businesses have those trainees building up the skills of tomorrow and allowing those businesses to grow. The other thing I will just briefly mention is to Councillor Williams' point regarding broadband is we have a fantastic gigabit broadband scheme targeting the 4% of households in Staffordshire that don't yet have superfast broadband. So you can, through that scheme, receive a considerable grant towards paying for the cost of that. That's up to £1,500 for rural properties, and it's up to £3,500 for rural small and medium-sized businesses. So that's absolutely directed towards that issue. And I'd encourage anybody who does at the moment lack superfast broadband, make an inquiry regarding that scheme. If you Google Staffordshire Gigabit Voucher Scheme, it will come up. Use it, get yourself connected. And another example of the sort of thing we're doing to help our businesses and indeed Staffordshire residents generally to engage with the digital world. Thank you, Leader.
Right, thank you very much indeed. So the recommendations are that you note the challenges in performance and advise on any further information and or action required. That has been done. Thank you very much indeed, colleagues, for your work, your hard work through the portfolios, and to directors and assistant directors for the work that they're doing to help us get here. We do take being held to account very seriously indeed, and that's the reason why we spend as much time as we do on these reports every quarter, and indeed on the run-up to this, the amount of time we spend reviewing how we're getting on. We're moving on to the next item of the agenda, which is the potential joint coroner's service business case brought to us by the Cabinet Member for Communities and Culture, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chairman. This report is recommending to Cabinet that we endorse the business case for submission to the Chief Coroner and Ministry of Justice, subject to a similar resolution being passed by Stoke-on-Trent City Council. We agree that the proposed timeline for the business case to be submitted to the Chief Coroner and Ministry of Justice, subject to a similar resolution being passed by Stoke-on-Trent City Council. And we agree that the name for the new service will be Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent Coroner's Service, subject to a similar resolution being passed by Stoke-on-Trent City Council. And we agree that the Assistant Director, Culture, Rural and Safety Communities be delegated to take all steps necessary to progress the business case to completion on behalf of Staffordshire County Council. Now, this report sets out the key points for consideration to create a new joint service for North Staffordshire and Stoke and Staffordshire South coronial jurisdictions. The proposed new joint service will follow national policy established by the Ministry of Justice and supported by the Chief Coroner to merge smaller coronial areas and reduce the overall number of coronial jurisdictions in England and Wales when and if an opportunity to consider this arises, as it has here. A business case which is required by the Chief Coroner and the MOJ to request the change, should Cabinet agree to the proposal, is appended to this report, as you'll have seen, and it contains the detail of the proposal. The reasons why a joint coroner service is being considered is set out in the Cabinet report, which highlights that this will provide an opportunity to really improve our services in the county to bereaved families in Staffordshire. The proposals include combining back office teams to create a single coroner's support back office operation. However, a coronial presence will remain in both Stafford and Stoke-on-Trent so that access to a local service is maintained. If Cabinet agrees the recommendations contained within the report, the business case will be submitted to the Ministry of Justice, which will consider the request and will prepare the laying of the statutory instrument for the legal process. And then a full consultation will take place, and that is always administered by the MOJ. This report was discussed at the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 20th of January, and the comments received at that committee have been incorporated into the business case. And some of those concerns were based around innovation, risk mitigation and cost, and those have been answered in the body of this report. The business case has been co-created by officers at Staffordshire and Stoke City Councils. The democratic process is following a similar parallel timescale in Stoke City Council to that within our county council. The report proposes that both local authorities enter into a joint legal agreement which will set out the provision of the service, the accountabilities, all the responsibilities, and of course the monitoring and financial arrangements. Overall governance of the service will then be through a joint executive committee which will include members from both authorities, and they will agree the funding allocations and budgets, and they'll also approve and authorise expenditure and all other appropriate decision making. The joint committee will be supported by finance and legal officers from both authorities, and there will be an accountable officer within each authority who will have the strategic and operational oversight of the coroner's service, and they'll provide an appropriate advice and reports to the joint committee as is appropriate. It's intended to use what's called a Section 113 agreement to allow the joint service to operate under the Local Government Act 1972. The business case proposes to keep the current arrangements for the location of inquests. These will continue to be held locally, both in Stafford and Stoke-on-Trent. And it's also proposed to enhance the local service with the use of additional local sites, for example, libraries within the districts and boroughs to provide access to the coroner and to the service. So it's been agreed that the proposed new service will not exceed funding over and above the current financial commitment of either authority. So in summary, Chairman, this really is quite a surprisingly positive story and a positive report for members of the public. It will bring efficiency savings, and it will help those bereaved people to see a real benefit and greater accessibility to the business throughout the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. For members of Cabinet who weren't present at this scrutiny committee, I am a big fan of scrutiny. I think it adds real value to the process of the decision making, and I've got to say Councillor Wilson was subjected to some of the most robust scrutiny we've seen for some time in her presentation of the coroner's service, and I do think it adds value. I think it was a little uncomfortable, but that's what sometimes scrutiny is. So well done for dealing with that, and well done for incorporating those comments. Councillor White.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader. This is an example of the sort of really important services that we do look after here at the County Council, and it's one whenever it comes up. I'm always drawn back to my wife's previous career as a journalist, where one of the regular features of her work was attending inquests and speaking to the relatives of people who met an untimely demise, and the value that those people placed in being able to establish in the highly forensic but also highly compassionate way that the coroner's service deals with those untimely deaths and helps to provide some clarity and an opportunity for some closure in terms of those very sad circumstances is incredibly important. When Councillor Wilson brought this proposal to Cabinet, we gave it some pretty firm scrutiny as well, to make sure that these proposals were fit for purpose, and I'm pleased to say that they really are. It's a good thing when we can be more efficient and use taxpayers' money better, but in this case the efficiency is mostly, I think, in the quality of the service actually, and doing things in a way that will mean that people who have to use this service will be able to do so in a good way. So thank you very much, Councillor Wilson, for the work that you've done on this with your officers, and I'll certainly be pleased to support it in a moment.
Councillor Wilson, you gave us the recommendations during the course of your presentation. Is there anything you'd like to say in response to what I'd said or what Councillor White said?
Only to say that I'm really proud of the service that we offer. I feel that the service that we'll be providing as a joint service is going to be even better. this comes in people's lives at a time when people are in a really highly emotional and stressful state. And I feel that keeping everything going seamlessly, this is part of the work that the council does that people don't notice. And actually that's a good thing, because if they did notice it, we're doing something wrong. So I'm really proud of this, and I'm glad to take on those comments. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the recommendations. All those in favour? For the record, that is unanimous. Moving on then to agenda item number 11, which is decisions taken by Cabinet members under delegated powers. There is one by the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People in approving entering into the required contractual arrangements with partners and providers where required to deliver the Household Support Fund in Staffordshire. And I'm sure if Councillor Sutton was here, he might want to speak to that briefly, but a great scheme and delighted to be able to support that. The forward plan of key decisions. First of all, in March, we've got in public the 2022 to 23 Schools Capital Programme brought to you by Councillor Price. Economic Strategy brought to you by the Deputy Leader of the Council and Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills, Councillor White. Children's Home Block Contract brought to you by Cabinet Member and for Children and Young People, Councillor Sutton. Highways and Transport Capital Programme 22-23 brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Highways and Transport, Councillor Williams. Agreement for the Mental Health Act Section 117 Aftercare Needs brought to you by Cabinet Member for Health and Care, Councillor Jessel. Moving forward then into April in public, Bus Service Improvement Plan, Enhanced Partnership Plan and Scheme brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Highways and Transport. You'll refer to him, you'll hear him refer to that as BSIP. But that actually stands for Bus Service Improvement Plan. He did it during the course of his presentation earlier, so I just expand on that. Again in April, outcome of the formal statutory proposal, notice process for the proposed expansion of St Leonard's Primary School, Stafford, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Education and Send, Councillor Price. Staffordshire Rural Economic Strategy brought to you by the Deputy Leader of Council and Cabinet Member for Economy and Skills, Councillor White. Framework Agreement for the Demolition Services brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Commercial Matters, Councillor DeVille. Excellent report. Looking forward to that, Councillor DeVille. Again in April, the Integrated Performance Report Quarter 4 21-22 brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources and myself. And then moving forward into July, we've got the North Staffordshire Local Air Quality Plan, NSLAQP, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Highways and Transport. And that concludes the forward plan. I now move to agenda item number 13, which is the exclusion of the public. I move that the public be excluded from the meeting for the following exempt items of business, which involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraph Part 1 of Schedule 12A as amended of Local Government Act 1972, as indicated below.